In this lesson, I'll cover how to really customize your portfolio so that it looks great, is easy to navigate, and will get you the results you want. Let's dig in. All right, so now that we're on our website, we don't have much going on in terms of content yet. So you'll see this prompt here encouraging you to write a blog post, create an about page, set up your home page, and manage your widgets, menus, and all of that. And we are going to get through all of that in this lesson. So first, this is your dashboard. This is your back end. We are logged in, so we have access to this. And this will be accessible to anyone that you add as a user and admin on your website. To see the front end of your website, you can just click on the title up here, and to return to your dashboard, you can just do this. This bar will only appear if you are logged in, so your website visitors won't see it. Now, the first thing I want to take a look at is the customizer. By clicking on Appearance and Customize, it will launch right here. At the top here, we have Site Identity, and this is where you can upload a logo and change the site title of your website. So when I set up this website, I went ahead and customized the site title, but the tagline still needs to be updated. In fact, what I might do here is use this as my tagline to give a little bit of context to what this portfolio is about and who it is. You can also choose to hide the site title, especially if you have a logo, which already has that information in it. So I created a logo earlier, and I'm gonna upload it. Now I like adding an alt tag because this is not only helpful for your website to show up in Google image searches, but if anyone is using a screen reading technology, when the screen reader gets to an image, it will read out the alt text. So I like making it as descriptive as possible. All right, so now that this is showing up, you can tweak this a little bit, try a different logo, different sizing, but I'm gonna go ahead and remove my site title and leave this as is. This has now become clickable and will always take you back to the home page. Even if you don't display your site title and tagline, this information will show up in your browser, so I recommend putting something descriptive. You can also set a small image that will display in your browser as well. So I recommend setting something, and here's an example of how this would show up in your browser. Now, I just want to point out that the different settings that you have in this customizer do depend on your theme. So these are pretty standard, the ones that you see here across all WordPress themes, but different themes might add a couple of more options. And when we install Jetpack, you'll also see a couple of more options show up in this customizer. Menus is theme specific as well. So here we have theme locations that are primary, footer menu, and social links menu. So your primary menu shows up at the top. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new menu and call it main menu, and I'm going to put it in the primary location. And if you click on add items, this is where you can add pages, outbound links to other websites, links to your posts, to categories, and more. When we have more content, I'll come back to menus and show you exactly what I mean. I'm also going to create a footer menu, and I'll add some different things to that later. And I will create a social links menu and tie it into the social links menu. And here I can actually put stuff right away because this, you can link your Facebook page. You can put your custom Facebook. You can put your Twitter, Instagram, and all of your social links. It'll auto-populate these where the theme has the social links menu show up. So you can have these run all along the top here as you add them. Awesome, so I'm gonna save what we've done so far. This theme has a widget area that is only in the footer. I'm gonna leave a couple of these and hide some of them. I'm going to hide meta. I don't need that. And then I'm going to show you what you can add in the footer. So here are some of the examples of widgets that you can add, and you can play around with this and see what works. Later on when we install Jetpack, you'll get a couple of more options for widgets, so we'll explore those in lesson 6. All right, homepage setting is where it gets interesting because there really are only 2 types of ways to set up your WordPress website. Either you have your latest blog posts on your homepage, or you have a static page. Showing your latest post will populate your homepage with your latest blog posts. And by setting a static image, you can create a page that you will then, control and populate with content and have that displayed as your homepage. And when you do set a static homepage, you then have to choose which page is going to be your post page where all your latest blog posts populate. So in our situation, I am going to select a static page and I'm going to choose home and create a new page and create a blog page for our latest posts. And if we go to our home page here by clicking on the logo, I'm going to hide the footer and leave the site header as is, and we'll see later on if I change my mind. So let's save what we've done here. Additional CSS, if you want to have more control over how the different design elements of your website show up, CSS is a great way to do that. And if you do get really interested in customizing your site, I highly recommend taking a Intro to HTML and CSS class. A lot of the features I want to add to this website are only possible once I've installed the Jetpack plugin. So I'm going to do a couple of things to my homepage here. And then in the next lesson, in lesson 6, I'm going to install Jetpack and unlock even more features that will enhance your portfolio. So let's start with editing the homepage here. I'm going to close the customizer and go back to pages where I have my blog post page, homepage, and privacy policy. I'm going to go ahead and publish this privacy policy. Every website needs a privacy policy, so I'm going to make this one available to the public, and I'll probably add it to the footer of my website. Okay, let's go to the home here and click on edit. So here we have the block editor in WordPress. Now this is pretty much the same whether you're editing a blog post or a page. So here, if you click on the plus, you can add an image, text, a heading, a gallery, which is really interesting and will be useful for your different portfolio items. And if you browse all, there is so much more. So I would recommend taking some time to pretty much add any of them, check them out. And what happens when you add one of these blocks is that it'll pop up here and you'll have a couple of more editing options here, including duplicating it, inserting before and after, moving it, and saving it as a reusable block to be used later. And then when you click on here, there's a whole panel that shows up here. Whether you're editing a page or a post, there's going to be a section here that allows you to control the entire page settings, so adding a featured image, turning on comments, and things like that. But each block also has its own editing features. But if you add any of these, they'll also have their own styling options. So for example, this button, you can control how round it is, whether it opens in a new tab, and kind of the look and feel of your button. If you have images, I think your website can handle them, although I would upload them in a slightly lower resolution than what you would typically share with a client, just so that your website isn't super slow and you don't use up all of your space. If you are embedding audio, I would recommend using something like SoundCloud, or if you have other places where you host your audio, you can also embed from wherever you're hosting. And definitely for video, I would recommend hosting it on a third-party site like YouTube or Vimeo. All of these buttons can also help you if you happen to be hosting your content or want to pull in content from any of these services. For our homepage, I am going to create a navigation that really helps your visitor to access the different portions of your portfolio. So in this example, I'm creating a portfolio for a multimedia artist, which means she has different disciplines and wants to organize her portfolio into those buckets. Now, in lesson 1, I did encourage you to take some time to write out all the different type of portfolio items you would like to add and whether or not you need to create different categories and sections. If you are a photographer, you might want to divvy up your photos by style, like portrait, landscape, photojournalism. Or if you do different services, it might be wedding photography, engagement photos, and corporate headshots, for example. So take some time to think through these categories because it is going to help you set up the structure of your website. So I'm going to set up a pretty basic homepage that I feel will serve a portfolio the best. And you can get inspired by what I'm doing or play around with the blocks on your own website based on the type of content that you have. So first I'm going to go into columns because I find that columns really help you structure your content on your website. Next, I'm going to add a type of image which is called a cover. And this one is a dynamic image type that I really like because it gives you a lot of flexibility and a lot of options on the side here. So I need to upload some content. So I've just pulled some content from the internet. I would recommend renaming all of these to be very explicit of what they are. So, if you have the name, the gallery, the artist, whatever it is, the information that is attached to this image, I would be very specific about it. And I would also compress these images. So these images are probably a bit too large, but since this is a demo, I'm not going to be uploading hundreds of photos, but I would definitely recommend reducing the size of any photos that you do upload to your website. All right, so here we have our image that is populated in here. So I would go full width with this to fill up the whole column. And I would call this block illustration because what I'm doing here is this will be clickable and this will take the website visitor to the section of your website where you have all of your illustration portfolio items. So I want this to be kind of descriptive, enticing, and to represent that category of your portfolio. So you can add a link here. We don't have our section set up for illustration, so I'll come back to this in the future. The other thing that I need to set is a hover reveal. So I just think this looks so elegant when you hover over it. You see the link, and this will take you eventually when we link it to the illustration section. So for this column here, I want to make this full width to really take up the entire space. And I'm also going to change this. All right, so one thing that I do want to add here is a little bit of a mission statement. Illustration, installations, and I'm going to add another block here from the same family of blocks, and I'm going to make it full width to match, and I'm going to add this as photography. And again, make it a hover reveal. So I'm kind of making up some stuff here. It's really just placeholder text. But I would recommend putting your mission statement or who you are as an artist throughout your homepage so people can really get a sense of what to expect in your portfolio. And you can play around with the different settings for any of your blocks, really. So, this could be, you can change the color. You can add a background color if you wanted, which right now looks pretty bad, but you can play around with these settings to really match your style. We could even change this from a regular paragraph to a heading if we wanted to add even more boldness to it. Now, down here is really up to you. It depends on what the main purpose of your website is. If you want people to get in touch with you, you could put a contact form down here. If you had a blog that you regularly updated, we could populate this section with your blog posts. So if you had a blog section, I would start with a heading, and I would call this news or blog, and then I would And then I would pull in one block called posts. And so you could do archive if you wanted them organized by month, or latest posts just to display all of them. So right now we only have one sample blog post, but if we had many, they would show up here, and you could organize which categories would be displayed, how many items, if the featured image would be displayed alongside it. And here we have the other option to show them in columns. So this is how you could pull in more content on your homepage. A lot of artists like to showcase what galleries they're in at the moment. So that might be something that you want to list here. If you have an agent, you might want to put their contact information. Or if you have a gallery that you run, you might want to also put your gallery hours. So these are all available in your block editor, and you can play around with the different ways to display content to decide how you want to display that information. So now that we've edited our home page, I want to show you a couple of other pages that you should add. So I definitely recommend adding an about page in some shape or form. So it could be about the artist if you want to stay in the third person. You could add bio or CV/resume. You can have your about information kind of in any way that suits you, but I would recommend having an about page in some shape or form. So here, this is another page. We add content. I would break it up into paragraphs and headings. So kind of your basic structure for any content. And the reason why structure like this is important is psychologically, people skim pages, so they need to be able to find the most important information. And design-wise, your headings are organized by importance. So your H1 is always reserved for the page title, and then H2 can be your paragraph headings. And if you have smaller paragraphs nested underneath there, you would use an H3 heading, and so on. So this is important for just information architecture, but also for search engine. So when a search engine crawls this page, it's looking at the H1s, H2s, and H3s as the highlights of what this page is about. So I recommend making them very descriptive and to reflect what the content of the paragraph is. If you have something like services, I would also create a page like this. And something that you might want to consider doing is making a breakdown of what you offer. And again, I would recommend columns to do something like this. And maybe you want to nest your different services and packages. This is where columns can get interesting because you can play around with text and display images within the confines of a column. You can add multiple buttons, and you can add a link to whatever you need to point this to. So next, I'm going to think about the large categories that I had on my homepage because I want to add those to the menu. So illustration is one. Photography was another. And installations was the other one. I hope I got that right. So what I want to do next is I want to go back to my customizer and click on menus here because I never actually added anything to my menu. So because this is clickable, it's not necessary to add a home button to your menu, but sometimes just for clarity, it can be helpful to add that, but I would just call it home. And now I would add a link to your different sections. Maybe I would start with about the artist. And now here it's really up to you how you want to display your portfolio items. So I'm going to show you two different ways. One of them is just to add these top pages right to your menu. Now this makes it easy to access, and for whomever is looking for this they'll be able to click right there. But keep in mind, you also have those links on your homepage themselves. So having them in the menu might take up space unnecessarily. So one thing you can do is to nest them under a parent menu item. Now, if you want to nest them under a parent item that is clickable, you could do something like this and just pull it underneath. And then both of these are clickable, but one is underneath the other. Something that I sometimes do is I create a fake menu item by clicking on custom links, and I just put a pound or a hashtag, and I put a text that I want to display. So this link doesn't actually go anywhere, but it will show up as a menu item. So I might use something, just kind of an umbrella term like art, and add it. And then I'll use that to organize everything else as a drop down. So this is just one little technique you can use to organize your links. It's debatable whether it's better to have this as a page that leads to maybe all projects, or that leads to a page like this where you have more links to click. But there's also a school of thought that recommends leaving this as a blank item because people don't always click on it and will go straight to these links instead. So up to you how you want to organize it, but that's two different ways to nest things in a way that frees up your menu to add more items and also organizes it under a larger category. So I'll leave this like this, and then next I will add more pages. So blog, for example, and contact. Oh, services as well. Don't want to forget that. And if you had more pages for each of your services, you can nest them under there as well. Now I'm going to save this because I like the work that we've done. And then I'm going to go back to our footer menu and add some things there. If you wanted to just mimic what you had up here and put it in the footer, you could go back here to your main menu and have it also appear in your footer. So if we went to one of our blog posts, this would appear in your footer as well as at the top. But I want to try something a little bit different for my footer. So I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to create my own footer menu. And there I'm going to add just some basics like contact and my privacy policy and maybe the blog. And leave it at that. Now the reason why my footer menu isn't showing up on the home page is because I did set my home page not to show a footer, and that was checked off earlier here. So if I did add that back, it would show the widgets that I have activated as well as this footer menu. So notice here how these look very similar. This is a widget section, so it's controlled here in the customizer under widgets. But when I hit it, I decided to manually add a new section that pulls in my latest blog posts to the home page anyway. It's two different means to get to the same outcome. So whether you want to leave your widgets in the bottom of the page and just customize which ones show up, or whether you want to hide them and only allow them to show up on your posts is totally up to you. In fact, the widgets that are available to you are often also available in block form, so you can add them in your content in other ways. But for now, I'm going to continue on and hide those from my homepage to keep it streamlined and neat. I'm going to hop back into my homepage here. So now I'm going to add a link to this and add a link here as well to installations, and here to photography. We haven't really touched upon blog posts all that much, and it's really up to you whether you want to add a blog to your website, but I do recommend at least having it enabled, because whether you want to add news or a straight up blog, Google likes it, your website visitors will find it interesting, and it can even just be updates on where you're showing your art next, how people can get in touch with you, updates on your creative process. Whether you update it every week or every season is up to you, but it's nice to have that enabled and have it operate in a different way than just adding a page, for example. I'll show you how, because if you edit your post here, there are new things and different things from posts. One of those is categories and the other one is tags. Categories and tags will also be helpful for your portfolio items, so I will talk a little bit more about these in the next lesson. But for your blog, you might want to categorize your blog posts into a couple of categories, and for tags, you can be a little bit more liberal with them and add tags that are relevant to each post. You can set a featured image, you can choose whether or not to allow comments on your blog, and you can add an excerpt that will show up when you embed blog posts elsewhere on your site, like on the homepage in the example that I just did. In the next video, I will install Jetpack and Yoast SEO plugins, and those will unlock even more features for your website, for your portfolio items, testimonials, as well as more blog post features. See you in the next video.